Hello and welcome back to the Digital Marketing Podcast. My name is Kieran Rogers.
I'm Louise Crossley.
And I'm Daniel Rolls.
And today we are talking about website migration.
So this one, you might think, well, I'm not doing a website migration. This is not going to be of relevance to me. I promise you there will be stuff in here that is going to be relevant. And when you this is stuff you need to learn about before you do it.
Yes.
Because if you don't, it's a disaster. And this comes from a little bit of my experience, but a lot of Kieran's experience as well. I've just seen people do this very badly. So before we do that, we've got a little giveaway that we thought we'd share. So Louise, tell us all about it.
Yep, so we have partnered up with the Revenue Marketing Summit. So they are back at the Intercontinental O2 in London on the 29th and 30th of November. It would be a great event for marketers who want to learn the latest insights and takeaways. They have talks from the likes of Uber, Pinterest and HSB there, so some quite good names.
Yeah, it looks like a good lineup.
Yeah, we have a giveaway for podcast listeners for a free gold pass to the event. So that's definitely worth checking out. We'll put a link to the show notes in it. That giveaway ends on the 30th of October, so you've got still a couple of weeks to enter. And we also have a 20% discount for podcast listeners as well. So we'll put all of that in the show notes.
Yeah, take a look. I mean, it's one of those conferences where there's great speakers, all the kind of suppliers are there, but it's that opportunity to network a bit as well. So I think it's well worth taking a look at. targetinternet.com/podcast, and you'll find the links in there. So, migration. Where does this come from, Kieran? What are we talking about?
So,
what is a migration?
That's a migration.
What do you explain it?
So it's when you move from one web platform to another. So it's going to happen, isn't it? At some point.
Or even if you maybe just launch a redesign or something like that, right?
Redesign, yeah.
Or maybe change website structure.
Yeah,
So any major change to the website.
That's the big problem, is when you change your web page structure.
So the URLs.
All your URLs are gonna change, and it creates a few problems. And like a lot of this comes from my experience being called in to fix this when it's all gone horribly wrong. And I don't know how words got out that I do this, but it seems to have. And I've come across quite a few recently, and it's quite shocking. And very often, like I'm thinking of one client who an agency had persuaded to move to HubSpot. That had happened way before I ever got involved with them. HubSpot, amazing platform, nothing wrong there. But the agency claimed they had lots of like migration experts. You think, great, got that covered. Not going to worry about that then. And actually, when I looked, the sort of site had launched, the traffic plummeted.
Right.
And I was called in to look, could you help? Because you know about SEO.
So this is, the main thing we're talking about here is organic search traffic, right?
Well,
in terms of your search engine rankings?
Yeah, but also one of the things that I've learned looking at a few of these is actually it really kicks you hard on paid search as well. And I'll go into that.
Yeah,
Why?
so I think that's really interesting.
I think that's a real elephant in the room. Like nobody seems to be talking about this. And it's brutal.
This is a Google thing as well, I think, particularly the way that they have now started to look at things over a period of time as a trend. So, I mean, I'm sure you'll talk about that as kind of what.
Yeah.
The problem is, and this is why it's kind of worth thinking about before we do it, is that once you've messed this up, there isn't a quick fix.
No.
And also, I would always say it's never going to be perfect. So I think if you do a really well-planned migration, you're always still going to see a dip.
That's the truth of it. That's the elephant in the room, right? You can do everything correctly, and you will still see a dip. And actually, I guess that was my reason for wanting to push this out there. Like, guys, if you're doing this, you need to like set expectations and prepare everybody within your organization that this is just something you've got to take on the chin. Even if everything is right. Now, if everybody's aware of that, then they don't panic as much and it's all a little bit calmer. And also you can put in contingency plans to prepare for this. So, you know, if you're going to migrate, expect there to be a period where your organic traffic drops to next to nothing and your pay-per-click campaigns go haywire and like don't get shown to the majority of people.
So what's the contingency then? Because I was going to say, well, if your SEO dips, surely you can just up your paid search. But actually, if you can't do that either.
No, you're a bit stuck on that one. I would argue a couple of things. So we'll go into why it happens and what you can do to minimise the effect. That's the first thing.
Can I ask a question first?
Yes, you can.
So you talk about the impact on search rankings. And obviously, if you're swapping from one domain to another, you understand why that happens. Yeah. If, for example, you're just launching a website redesign like we did, does that still have impact on search rankings?
Yeah, it does. Because, okay, so let's let's go into some of the detail on this and why it occurs, right? So we know that one of the reasons our website ranks is because of all of those lovely links from other websites to our own website. We call them backlinks.
Yep.
Websites link to you, and that gives you like credibility within the search rankings. And that's always been a major factor. Google have always been very open about that. We don't know the extent to which that affects.
They have said it's less
big.
of a thing, but it is still a thing.
It's still big.
Yeah, and actually, if people are following those links and going to your website, it also has an impact. So either way.
So your problem is, Louis, although you've not changed the domain name, and there's a whole new world of pain if you do that, right? You have changed all of, like, you think about, let's say a typical website might have 3,000 to 8,000 backlinks out there on the internet, right? Those backlinks might be pointing to 800-900 different pages on your website. If you relaunch, like you redesign, typically all of those 800-900 web pages that are being linked to by these thousands of websites, they're not going to have the same web address.
Right.
But even if they do, I mean, I think to your point, if everything has got the same web address, it still has an impact, right? Because then Google is saying, oh, all of these pages have changed.
Well, to a certain extent, yeah.
So it's still going to have an impact.
It'll have less of an impact, but it will have an impact.
Can I just talk about a domain thing for a moment?
Yeah.
Just a slight tangent, but kind of related. So we're targetinternet.com / whatever zillion of pages we've got kind of after that as well. And back in the day when I launched the business, Target Internet made a business. It made sense because we used to talk about, internet marketing. Whereas now, really, we should be called Target Digital or Digital Education or something. The domain doesn't really connect to what we do necessarily. And I was at a conference and people would look at my name badge and go, a guy walked up to me and said, oh, do you do internet cabling? I was like, no, we don't. And you could see the disappointment on my face. And he was like, I'm terribly sorry, I haven't heard of your brand. And I kind of was like, right, do you know what? We need to just get a new domain. We need to get a whole new domain and something that's a bit more either explains what we do or is a word that just, is a single word kind of thing. And then you look at the pain that you would go through in order to do that. One, people... You get to recognize a brand after a period of time. You spent all that time building that brand, so there's a damage there. I could talk about that separately. But actually, just the pain from an SEO point of view of having a new domain with no authority whatsoever that you haven't built up. And we're going to do a separate episode about what's trending in SEO at the moment. But the whole expertise, authority, trust thing, one of the things that Google are doing is you can click in your search results and it will tell you how trusted this website is. And the first thing it says is how long they've been indexing the website for. So you're immediately at a disadvantage if it's a brand new website. So if you are going to do a rebrand, think about if you really do need to change your domain and if changing the name is actually a sensible kind of thing because you are giving yourself so many more problems.
It's almost like a flow diagram, isn't it? Do we really need to change our domain name? Yes. Are you really, really sure?
Yeah, exactly.
It can be done, but expect a world of pain with it and expect to not necessarily get the results that you want. I was looking at...
It took a long time.
A retailer I think they were like in Norfolk or somewhere, and they added an S to their domain. Because everybody called them that.
Right.
Like their name was like the singular version, but everybody referred to, like if it was Daniel, everybody referred to them as Daniels.
Yeah.
And so they decided to do that. And I could see, oh gosh, that's a whole world of pain that they've just opened up. And again, that hadn't been done particularly well either. So like it's a very real thing. So like you expect if you make major changes to your URL structure to have issues with search engine optimization. But most brands wouldn't expect for their pay-per-click campaigns to fall off a cliff. And the reason they do is because baked into the organic search algorithm are these rules that say, look, if anything changes significantly, reduce the visibility of this website and test. And what the system tends to do, from what I've seen, is reduce the visibility for 3 to 4 weeks. And it tests. So that's definitely what I've seen happen again and again organically when people have not even changed the domain name. They've just changed to a new website. Like they've upgraded from WordPress to HubSpot, for example, or to any platform. The URL structure is going to change and suddenly all those backlinks are broken, right? And even if the only thing you can do as a website owner if you're doing that is to set up redirects. Right, so one of the things I recommend to people, that what you want to do, it's quite simple really, get every backlink piece of data you can get. So you can pull up to 1,000 backlinks from Google Search Console. You can pull them from Bing Webmaster Tools. You can pull them through all the SEO tools. I mean, SEMrush, SE ranking, they'll all do this. They'll give you a backlink report. Actually, in those tools, you can actually monitor any new or any lost backlinks, which is super useful. But what I like to do is to get multiple references. The other people that have the biggest backlink directory of all is Majestic. And actually, if I'm really serious about this, I'll take out a Majestic subscription just purely to pull that data for all the clients so we can get that in there, because theirs is by far the biggest from what I've seen. Like, if anybody disputes that, get in touch and let me know. But as far as I know, that they seem to be the daddy of all this. But even then, like, different tools will have pulled in different backlinks because no one is Google. No one's
has the entire index.
The entire index.
There was one you used to use that I think was called SEO Frog or something.
That's Screaming Frog. I'll come on to that. That's not so much for... You use that for testing backlinks, not for identifying them. But we'll come on to Screaming Frog because that's really, really great tool, Louise. So, so we pull all of the backlinks we can find from multiple different places. I dump them all in a massive spreadsheet and then just using Excel, just dedupe.
Okay.
Right. What that gives you is a master list of the pages on your old or current website, as we call it now, because we're doing this in advance of the web changeover, that other people link to. Right, now what I can do is set up the redirects.
So make sure
you've got that master list. And this is why this needs to be done well in advance. I've spent too much of my life racing to get this done in a week and pulling all-nighters to
and these should be permanent redirects, right? So because you've got different types of redirects.
Yeah.
And I'm just going to see if I get this right. So a 301 is a permanent redirect. And a 302 is a temporary, and you don't want them to be temporaries. This is saying to Google, this now lives here.
Yeah, right. I mean, different people approach it in different ways. I have heard people say, no, do temporary redirects because Google don't specify what temporary means, and it gets. I'm like, no, like this has moved, so like give it a 301 redirect. That's how I do it.
Does that have, depending on how many backlinks you have pointing at your website, then putting in that many redirects, does that have an impact on like your page speed?
It can do, depends how you do it. So ideally you want to do this at a server level. And also if you've got millions of them, you might prioritize on the backlinks you have from websites that have a higher domain authority. So most of the backlink tools will give you a domain authority for all the links that you've got. I tend to view anything over 30 as well worth having.
Right, yeah.
There is an extra stage you can go, which is to run all of your backlinks through a quality checker. I mean, SEMrush have a really good tool that does.
Because you might not want some of those links.
You might not want them. You might want them to remain broken. Yeah. And SEMrush definitely have a great tool for identifying like dodgy links that aren't maybe the best company. And actually, in that instance, not setting up redirects for those ones could actually be a benefit, because effectively, they've linked to a broken page, so you're not going to like get any negativity from that within Google.
I think this is a good opportunity to audit your internal links as well in terms of what's broken.
Yep.
Because all of those things are negative signals to Google as well. This website's not well maintained, it's linking to negative places, all that kind of thing. So that's a good opportunity as well. So
ideally, Louise, to keep the speed up, you want to make sure you only have the necessary forwards set up, and you want to do that at a server level. Right, so you're going to get your web teams to help set this up. And typically what I'll do is I supply the webmaster, whoever that is, with a list of the old web pages and where we want them to end up redirecting. And that's really what they want. I mean, they'll write all sorts of various code to like put it in place depending on the platform. I mean, like HubSpot have got their own like URL forwarding plan within it, or different platforms work in different ways, but that's what you want, those two things. And it takes time. Like, don't get too lazy. Don't just redirect everything to the homepage. Not going to work. Like, you want to try and match similar content with as similar a content as you can.
So you may not know the answer to this, but I'll kind of put the question out there. If you do that, does Google trust you less for a period of time? What do you feel the kind of reaction is from Google when you've suddenly got hundreds or thousands of redirects?
So it's a lot better than when you've got hundreds of thousands of suddenly broken backlinks.
Okay, that's a great point. Yeah,
right? So Google won't give you any benefit for a backlink that points to a broken page. Now, there is some evidence to suggest that when you set up a redirect, you don't get the full Google juice.
Yeah, right. Yeah, that would be my expectation.
Yeah. You won't do. But it's the next best thing. And let's face it, like, this is the problem. When other people link to you, you don't control those links, right? So you have to put something in place. I actually recommend you go a little bit further than that, right? So backlinks is one thing, but there's backlinks and there's backlinks. What about all the recent links in emails that you've been pushing out over the last 3-4 months? Because actually they may not work. Like, there might not be pages that other people have backlinked to, but you have in your email.
Sure.
What about all
Bad
the
user experience?
What about all the links you've put into social media?
If they've
Recently.
got tracking code on, would it stop the redirect from working?
The tracking code won't. No. So, interesting point, Louise. Interesting point. When you have tracking code, everything up until that question mark, that tells the browser, okay, this is the actual web address.
Right, okay.
The question mark effectively tells your browser, everything after this, Mr. Browser, is not the page location.
Yeah.
It's something else.
Well, there's a good point in there then, because if you had tracking code on it and it redirects to a new page, the redirect will strip the tracking code basically.
Yes, it does.
So unless you get them programmatically to say, please put the tracking code onto the redirect as well, it's not going to track in your analytics to show what campaign it was from and so on as well. So you would lose some of that stuff. So it's a really good point, actually.
Which for email, I mean, unless, for example, with HubSpot, it automatically puts the tracking code on, but with email, it will
just show up as direct traffic.
Yeah.
That's exactly it. Yeah. So you're going to...
You get a period of instability with that, but it doesn't last for that long. Like, you just got to take that one.
Yeah, and the half-life of an email and the half-life of a social media post is not that long anyway. So it's not... But I mean...
Just go in the extra mile. Like, if you're a small organisation, it probably doesn't matter that much, but it's just going the extra mile. Like, for big organisations, that's can be quite significant traffic. You also want to do a little audit on all those little internal links for little other systems. It's not just, your MailChimp or your Klaviyo that's sending out emails. You've got lots of post-sales emails that go out. Like, are they going to change? Make sure they're updated, because there's nothing worse than broken links in your client's user journey to sort of mess things up.
As part of a rebrand, you would normally go through and have an asset list where you're going through and saying, right, we've got to go and find our logo on my Google business listing, and I've got to find my logo on my podcast and all those kind of things. So really, this should be part of that. If you are doing a rebrand and anything else, it's like actually thinking about that and putting it onto that checklist is going to kind of help with this, because we take it seriously for brands, but because it's in the background and it's not really so immediately visible, we kind of miss it sometimes for these kind of situations.
So you launch your website, and hopefully you've set up all of your redirects. Right, there's another chasm we've got to avoid, and that's what happens to your Google Ads campaigns. Right, so you'll know this. If whenever you put a new campaign live, Google will take that campaign, it will put it into sort of a learning mode. So it throttles your visibility. Right, so in Google search ads, visibility is very much measured by impression share. So you get an idea of the people searching for this term, how many were shown your ad effectively within their user journey. I've seen impression shares. I mean, typically when I'm managing an account, I like to see it at around a good 75, 85% of impression share. I don't tend to recommend pushing beyond that with your PPC campaigns, because you just end up paying through the nose for it.
Right, okay.
Google likes to have a little bit of space to allow other people in to experiment to see whether their ads are better or not. And if you go for try and go for 100% impression share, that would be a horribly wasteful and expensive thing to do. It's not something the algorithm likes to do for you. So around 80%. So when you change your campaign, you can see that throttle right down to 20% sometimes. And it's no, that's so annoying. But what Google's doing is it's going, well, this is new, so I want to test it out on a few people and check the assumptions we've made about this campaign are correct with actual user data. Right, now when you change your entire URL structure and you've got new designs coming in, there's a lot changed. Right, the algorithms shut right down, close down that impression share, again, down to that 15, 20% level. Be aware that you might end up there for a couple of weeks, and that can be really frustrating. Right, so first things first, lots of tea and sympathy for your PPC guy, because he or she's really going to be stressed about this, right? And actually, I think you should plan for it. And the way I would plan for it, I would plan to do a lot more via social media and through social media ads. I'd try and push a lot more heavily into display campaigns.
Other display other than Google, basically.
Not Google search, because it's the Google search. So it can be you can use the Google display network, because remember you're buying impressions. You're not paying.
Well, I'd also say that if you're using Performance Max, because that's the moment where the opportunity is.
The Performance Max that gets hit the heaviest.
I was going to say, because that's the machine learning algorithm.
Machine learning, and it likes to average everything out, right? So when it sees everything changes, whoa, goes back into learning mode, throttles right down on your impression share. And if you're not ready for that, you're in for a rocky road. And I've seen this decimate the sales funnels of quite big organizations.
Yeah.
You know, they've gone from like 100, 120 leads a day down to like 30, like literally. And you won't notice it initially. The slide happens over a couple of days because it's kind of going, oh, everything's changed, and it sort of gradually shuts down depending on how active different campaigns
Well,
are.
what I'd say, this brings you back to marketing channel mix, which is like how over-reliant are you on a limited number of channels? Like, is everything organic search? I know how reliant we are on organic search. So it's like, okay, that's risky. So do we diversify that all the time, or are we aware of it and we've got things kind of ready as well?
I mean, plan to have promotions ready to push out via email.
Right. Yeah,
because
good
that's
point.
not going to get affected. But anything you can do to sort of minimise the impact and like expect for that to go down. Now, I go to the extent of like checking all of the landing pages for pay-per-click. And so one of the tools that you mentioned this earlier that I love is Screaming Frog.
Okay.
And what I love about Screaming Frog, it is quite a technical tool. And to do some of the things I'm going to talk about, you have to pay for it. Right, so you pay a year. I think it's around £180, something like that. So it's not the most expensive tool, because a lot of the others you pay monthly for them, and are paying a lot more than that a year. But it's the power it gives you. So I'm able to, for example, I'll take that big long list of backlinks that I've boiled down to maybe 800 specific pages on my website, and what I can do is pull that into a spreadsheet. I can do a search and replace for my actual domain. Yep. And I can replace all of those with the landing page, like the staging website domain, right? And then I can take that list, and Screaming Frog has this brilliant list mode, right? So normally when you use it, you hit the home page and it spiders out, or you give it a XML sitemap and it spiders out through all the URLs it can find. When you give it a list, it just hits everything on that list, right? And so on your staging site, you can hit all of those old so all of the new URLs that you design. Okay, you've got the old ones, they point to these new pages, but we'll create a copy of that
and test it out. Right.
And you can see, has the web team put all the redirects in place? Are they all working? Right. And I would also do this for all the landing pages on PPC to make sure they haven't changed and that they're all working.
Something you mentioned there as well, which is probably worth mentioning as well, is the sitemap thing. Dynamic sitemap. So a sitemap is an XML file that basically says to a search engine, these are all my pages. And this is kind of the structure and the hierarchy to some extent as well. What you want is a dynamic one, i.e. when you add a new page to the website, it's automatically added to the sitemap, because otherwise your sitemap is out of sync with what your actual reality of your website is.
Does that mean the page won't get indexed?
No, where it will. I mean, the thing is, it still gets indexed because it's linked to, but it just means that it's probably going to take a bit longer and Google might not find it immediately as well. So you're giving yourself a better chance basically by kind of going through and doing that. So different with doing. The other thing as well is when you do a website, I've seen this before, website changeover, they switch the old website off for a bit and they switch the new one on. And now and again, the robots text, which is telling the search engines what they can and can't look at, gets edited temporarily to don't look at anything. And then they don't change it afterwards. And you go, where's everything gone? And Google just can't access your website at all anymore. So I've seen that happen 2 or 3 times.
You want to have Google Search Console set up. You want to have Bing Webmaster Tools set up. These are your go-to tools. And you want to get that set up well before you do this. You have in there a really useful impression share like graph, which shows you where your impression share is at. One of my frustrations is that tool does not give you the last 48 hours worth of data.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Right? So you go live and you're blind to what's really happening for a couple of days, hours, by which time everything's dropped off a cliff. Right? So again, plan for that. What I like to do in that is do a year-on-year comparison for like the last 30 days, because you'll instantly see the impression share drops off a cliff. Down to like 15, 20%, while it tests. And interestingly, your click-through rate doesn't change. In fact, very often with a new website, that goes up. But that impression share is kept artificially low while it's testing everything out. And gradually over anything from like 10 days to 3 weeks, if you've done this well, it starts to improve. And actually, if you've done a really great job of migrating, you end up with a better website than what you had before.
Well, because the user experience, if you've improved it, that will signal to Google and then you'll get better rankings.
So a lot of the SEO tools have these audit tools, and it's lovely to like make sure you've got a recent audit before you change, and that's your nice benchmark. And I'm very often they give you a score out of 100.
Yeah, SEMrush I really rate for this actually, because I think there's a lot of stuff in there, but I think they've got some great auditing tools.
You then want to audit the new website the day it goes live, and see, like, is our score out of 100 better? If it is, great, like happy days. But you really want to pay attention to things like broken links. And the other thing you really want to pay attention to, and I've seen this loads, and it's a massive problem, is web developers and sometimes the website tools themselves. Shopify is terrible for this, will automatically set up redirects when you change URL pages. It's supposed to be helpful, right?
Yeah, I've seen this in a lot of content management systems.
Breaking links, yeah. Problem is, you control on your website all of the internal links. Right? You don't want to have any of those internal links pointing to something that then redirects. It creates you all sorts of problems.
Well, you've got redirects pointing to redirects, and it's like, that's a bad signal.
The big problem is when somebody's created a redirect to update the nav, because that's on every single page. It's like one problem there could create you 4,000 or 5,000 like internal links that are just like redirecting. So actually, if you're aware of this and you know what to look for, you can minimize the impact. But ideally, these things need to be tested and checked. And that's what I love about Screaming Frog. It's fantastic. Very often, the staging website is password protected. So a lot of the audit tools won't touch it. With Screaming Frog, you can give it the login credentials and it will log in and it'll
I've had
run.
problems with this before.
Yeah, and that's a great way around it. But like I say, you're going to have to pay for the tool in order to access these features. They do a free version. You can play around with it, and it'll audit like up to 500 pages. But you don't have some of the extra bells and whistles like password protection. You can also, with it, you can say ignore robots.txt. Again, that's a nice workaround because that can block you on some of the web-based tools. So yeah.
So brilliant. Some really good tips in there. So for all those links and those tools, go to targetinternet.com/podcast and we'll put those links in the show notes for you. And we'd love to hear your experiences. I'd like to hear your disaster stories as well.
They're always fun.
Yeah, I'm sure you've got a few. So just tell us what happened and how long it took to fix it and all those kind of things. But as ever, thank you for listening to the Digital Marketing Podcast.
Please subscribe for more videos like this and visit targetinternet.com for more free digital marketing resources.